The Senate invests $2.6 billion in the capital projects bill. It is a major investment in local communities, including $428 million in higher education projects.
We're partnering with YSU, Eastern Gateway Community College, the Youngstown Business Incubator, America Makes, T-Bike, Port Authority, you name it, coming together, K through 12, STEM academies, to put together an ecosystem that will really foster innovation.
Youngstown State University drives Mahoning Valley's Innovation and Commercialization Project. $3 million allocated in the capital budget makes a significant investment into both the university and the community.
We need to make sure that we've got, at the higher ed end of things, the people there coming up with those entrepreneurial ideas, those innovative things that can then ripple down and create the jobs and demand a larger workforce. And so we're really excited to get this started.
The state covers the cost of that investment through bonds.
But don't forget, all of those local community capital budget projects that the state does, the state is going to pay all of the debt service on. And so that's something that the state is investing in our local government partners to allow them to invest in quality of life items.
Here's the big picture. $650 million for local school construction, $500 million for local infrastructure, that's roads, bridges, water systems, $428 million for higher education projects, and $100 million designated for addiction services, developmental disabilities, mental health, and women's health. It's bond money that has not always been available.
When the state had tough economic times, we didn't do a capital budget because we didn't have the capacity. Now that the state's doing a little better, we're doing capital budgets again, and it's the way the state invests in state infrastructure. Look, if we don't invest in the infrastructure, we're going to have rundown state buildings and state parks that nobody wants to visit.
The Senate also passed a bill giving judges the ability to evaluate whether a person charged with a minor drug crime should automatically lose their driver's license. It's estimated 150,000 Ohioans lost their license for a minor drug crime that was not related to a traffic stop.
And now we have, some 20 years later, restored sound discretion to our courts, and this is going to mean more people working. This is going to mean fewer people being violated on their probation and parole, fewer people being remitted to prison for technical parole violations. It will help reduce the overcrowding in our prisons and local jails. So it really is a great step forward.
And Senator Seitz's bill passed unanimously, 33-0. Keeping government open to everyone. It's a priority for Senate President Keith Faber, who this week sponsored a bill regarding public records requests and dispute resolution. It's designed to make it much more affordable and accessible to every Ohioan.
And so this process facilitates that in an expedited fashion. You don't want to wait a year to get the records you want, and for most cases we think the records will be available within 45 days.
For $25, anyone could contest a denial of their records request to a mediator within the Ohio Court of Claims.
If you have a dispute with a local city or township or village and you want records and they're not giving them to you, you walk down to the local court clerk, file your dispute, and within a short period of time the government entity has to respond. You do a telephone mediation. If you don't resolve it then, you get a resolution by the special master, who is rendered into being a judgment enforceable by a court.
The bill has broad support, including the Attorney General, State Auditor, and the Ohio Newspaper Association.
People think it's just a bunch of nosy reporters and a media kind of thing, and it really isn't. Open records affect everybody, and sometimes the government is incorrect when it says you can't have something.
Keeping our student athletes healthy and safe. Senator Cliff Height's bill passed, requiring coaches from high school to youth sports programs to be trained in recognizing the symptoms leading to sudden cardiac arrest.
This will be another addition that's going to help your program. If you know what to look for, then you can prevent perhaps somebody from dropping due to sudden cardiac arrest, and nobody wants that to happen.
Former Miss Ohio Lindsay Davis lives with a congenital heart issue and knows how important it is to recognize the warning signs and be ready to act.
And I had this ticking time bomb in my chest, and at any moment I could have died, because the coaches and the teachers just had no idea this was even a possibility for someone that looked as healthy as I did at my age. People don't really correlate heart disease with someone as young as I was.
National Charter School Week brings a major reminder and a commitment from the Senate that it is the parents that know best about where to send their child to school.
It's special because it's very unique, and we have different things than other schools. We're like the most special school in Ohio.
Now that's school pride. Sarah goes to a charter school in Columbus and looks forward to class every day.
Mom loves to say math class because it's like very interesting and it kind of helps out with science. And I was in a science fair once, so it kind of helped me out.
Students, parents, and teachers rallied on the State House steps to support successful charter schools around Ohio. Giving parents the ability to decide where to send their children is a priority.
It's important that we allow opportunities for parents to make the decision that's best for their kids. Moms and dads make far better choices than education bureaucrats.
The National Alliance for Public Charter Schools recently recognized State Senator Peggy Lehner for her efforts leading charter school reform. She was named as one of 10 nationwide champions for charter schools.
Well, I think it's important that we have high-quality schools of all kinds because not all kids learn the same way, and not all kids are going to thrive in a traditional school. But I think the real key is to make sure that all schools, whether they're traditional, brick and mortar, online, or whatever, are the highest quality they can possibly be.
Like Senators Faber and Lehner, educators know one classroom style doesn't fit every student. Logging an 8-hour daily classroom environment is not always the answer. Online schools provide options for students learning at home. So whether online or in a building, options for families is important in achieving results.
Well, if you really want great results, most charter schools have small classroom sizes. So that alone helps with assessments and with testing and with the attention span of the child. So, I mean, it's a win-win for everyone. It really is.
And having a well-educated and qualified workforce is a win-win for companies deciding to invest in Ohio.
It's my pleasure to welcome you all and tell you Barclaycard is open and conducting business in Hamilton, Ohio.
Internationally known Barclaycard cut the ribbon on its first Ohio operation.
Thank you for investing in our community, investing in our state, and we look forward to being your largest U.S. operation.
The company spent $10 million renovating the site and plans to be here for the long term.
I love the way the building looks. It's fantastic, and I can't wait till we fill up this building and go from our 100 colleagues that we have right now, and we can grow that by 15 times to 1,500 colleagues, right?
The center is already breathing new life into an old industrial site.
This is about taking something that could have been bad and changing it into something really great. The facility that we're in right now used to be the old Champion Paper headquarters, and when they closed up shop, this building sat empty for a lot of years, and the neighborhood around it kind of deteriorated too. But with a lot of fresh ways to look at things and bringing technology into the community, now this is going to be a center of 2,000 jobs, the 1,500 from Barclays plus hundreds of other jobs, and we're just really positive about this for here in Butler County.
On this Memorial Day weekend, we remember the sacrifice of those who gave their lives for freedom, and we also tell the story of a liberator.
It was horror. I mean, I never saw anything like it.
Colonel Bill Miller didn't know what he faced behind those locked gates in Germany. When his tank broke through, the Akron native became a witness to the genocide of the Holocaust and a liberator to those clinging to life in the concentration camp.
I've seen men killed in combat, blown apart, but when you see 1,000 people strewn all over the ground, and many of them weren't dead, there was just moaning and hands moving. It was just the most horrible thing I can recall in my life.
Fran Greenberg told those gathered at the State House Holocaust Memorial Ceremony about a knock on her family's door that came in the middle of the night in France.
They took my dad in his pajamas and slippers. I never saw my dad again.
As part of the annual Holocaust commemoration, Senate President Keith Faber presented a resolution to the Columbus Jewish Federation.
May we never forget the sacrifices of so many that remind us how precious our pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness is, and that each individual holds the power to fight for our freedoms of our fellow citizens, both here and across the world.
Army veteran and State Senator Frank LaRose grew up under the guidance of Colonel Miller. Miller was his scoutmaster as LaRose earned his Eagle Scout. Memorial Day for them and families whose legacy is forever tied to the Holocaust brings a special message.
Memorial Day, we remember those that didn't come home. I'll be at the gravesite of my teammate who was lost in Iraq, and I would encourage all Ohioans to remember those who were lost in service to our country.
Many of the people here today have no idea the price that's been paid for the freedoms we have in this country.
Ohio is one of only 7 states across the country where admission into a state park is free. In fact, 2 years ago, the legislature passed, as part of the capital budget then, more than $88 million to upgrade our state parks. And it is really paying off today.
I think our parks are one of those things that we have as a community, as a state, that benefit the entire state. It's for everybody in Ohio, and they're one of our natural legacies that we'll hand down to our children.
The Grand Lake St. Mary's Campground is ready for the kids. Everything from a new splash pad for them to new electrical hookups for the new RVs of today. Not to mention completely renovated restroom and shower facilities.
But our infrastructure is old. A lot of it was built for the 1960s and 70s when you had pop-up campers that maybe you needed electricity, maybe not. Or maybe you needed some water, or maybe you wanted sewer. But today's campers are like this one behind us here that requires 50 amp, if not at least 50 amp service.
In addition to facilities, the investment is also directed at improving the water quality of the state park lakes.
We've seen the improvements, and then we've seen more attendance. And that's great for tourism, and it's great for camping, it's great for families.
From investing in Ohio's parks to investing in Ohio's workforce, the Senate recently passed a plan to pay off the remaining $225 million federal unemployment compensation loan. That will save Ohio employers about $81 per employee, amounting to millions in savings. Senate President Keith Faber developed the plan with the state's business community.
Reduce their per employee unemployment fee by roughly 50%, save roughly $500 million for Ohio employers. It just makes good sense. It's about creating jobs and growing the economy.
More jobs and opportunity means more dollars for travel and tourism in Ohio, and this state has so much to offer. And for more information about Ohio State Parks, log on to the DNR's webpage. That is ohiodnr.com. Medical marijuana in Ohio. In November of 2015, voters overwhelmingly defeated the Issue 3 campaign. Still, there is plenty of public opinion out there about medical marijuana. State Senator Dave Burke recently held a series of medical marijuana town halls across the state of Ohio and serves as the point person for the Ohio Senate on this issue. He is a registered pharmacist. Join us now for an in-depth look at medical marijuana, the current bill that the legislature is reviewing, with State Senator Dave Burke. Let's start with the medical marijuana town halls. Why did you think that was important to do, and what did you learn from it?
Well, Issue 3 was kind of a surprise to a lot of us in the General Assembly. They got the signatures, they put it on the November ballot, and it failed. It failed because of the monopoly provision. Yet there was a constituent-driven initiative to medical marijuana. It ended up on the doorsteps of your Ohio House. It was up to us to respond. The course of action could have been do nothing, but we didn't want to take that approach. We wanted to go out and listen to our friends and neighbors and understand what they meant. So we went to the four corners of our state directly, Senator Yuko and myself. The House stayed here in Columbus, and we wanted to get a definition of what people meant when they said medical. I think we've achieved that in this bill.
Do you think there was enough support from what you heard around the state for a true medical form of medical marijuana as a law here in Ohio?
You know, I heard two things, John. I heard medical marijuana, so defining that term, which to me was a more prescriptive type process, like you think of any medical procedure. The second was, if you have to do this, I'd rather it occur in the law than a constitutional amendment. Time and time again, we heard those things over and over again. It was a call to action.
Was there enough support there for you to believe that people were supportive of medical marijuana, not recreational marijuana?
You know, John, after you hear these stories kind of back to back and you start to piece together in different places across the state what people mean, that message becomes clear. I saw people that I would consider to be a textbook case, looking at it through the eye of what do my constituents mean when they say medical, and then what's maybe in that kind of gray area, and then what don't they mean. So I saw that spectrum we were at across the state, and it helped me craft policy directed to what people meant when they said medical.
You're a pharmacist by trade.
I am.
Define then medical marijuana. What is the definition of that?
Good question, and I would say that there are three categories of this definitional thing that people talk about. The first is medical, the second is medicinal, and the third would be herbal. When we talk about medical, we think about prescription drugs and the way things are handled today, a regulatory scheme, right? Some fact behind how these decisions are made, overseen in a way that protects people and gives a consistent product all the way, and probably more importantly than anything, does not cause harm. That's what healthcare is really all about. And that's what the oath is about, right? Don't cause harm. It says you don't have to help anyone. It just says don't hurt them. So when I hear people say that folks should have access to this, I get that. But on the other side of the coin, I also heard people say, but I don't want children to have access to this. It shouldn't be a drug of abuse. I don't support smoking. You don't grow medicine in your backyard. So as easy as it was to define what people wanted, it was also easy to define what people didn't want at the end of the day.
For years now, we've heard the FDA say smoking is bad, it's dangerous, it causes cancer. Yet, for the people that initially, through the Issue 3 campaign, had been talking about medical marijuana, but really many people saw that as a disguise for smoking recreational marijuana. What is it about smoking that it seems like many supporters would like the smoking part of medical marijuana? And is there a better delivery system when the FDA says smoking causes cancer?
Well, again, when we look back at our textbook cases, the folks I thought were clear and by far definition a medical need, they weren't smoking marijuana. These are people who were children with seizures. Children aren't smoking marijuana. People in hospice or other kinds of conditions where they're simply not able to smoke, even if they wanted to smoke. The textbook cases, they weren't about smoking. Even people in chronic pain, they would talk about rubbing oil on a certain part of their skin or another mechanism of ingestion other than smoking. So we started to understand that the true definition really wasn't around smoking when it came from the patient's point of view. But secondarily, there is not a single prescription drug that you smoke. Smoking just is not a viable method for drug delivery. Now, in the bill, you'll look and see we talk about vaping. Vaping isn't a combustion type product. It is a heated product where the oils from that product are released and inhaled, similar to a nebulizer treatment that a child with asthma may take. And those mechanisms are completely different, believe me. One is a fungible type of product, meaning raw marijuana. And the problem there is I can't tell the Ohio marijuana from the El Chapo Mexican marijuana, versus a product that's actually refined and defined in its strength, that is an oil or other type product that comes to you in a known dosage form. So I go back to public safety. You would want what your child is getting to be of a known amount and a known product. We can do that in the state of Ohio. Homegrown marijuana, Mexican cartel marijuana, you don't even know what's in this stuff. I mean, we can't even get clean heroin anymore, John. It has fentanyl in it. So how are we supposed to control a market that's controlled by people who just want to make money in a cartel type setting that is unregulated? That's unsafe.
And that's what you get with smoking.
That's
marijuana.
what you get with smoking marijuana.
But again, this plan, no smoking of marijuana, but the vaporization delivery or the vaping delivery.
We do allow for vaping, and we put a safeguard around that because we've asked the boards to look at regulating devices as well. So refilling your nicotine pen with this oil probably isn't going to be the deal. Looking at a mechanism that maybe delivers the drug in a correct way, in a known concentration, the way your doctor intended, that's a reasonable approach.
How do we track this? I know the bill that we received from the House talked about a medical marijuana control group or board, a commission in other words. Where do you think that the oversight and tracking of this product should be? Should it be within a different state agency? Should we be creating another bureaucracy? What do you see?
One of the pillars that we had when we went down this avenue was that we weren't going to create another branch of government, another taxing entity, or use regular tax dollars to fund this activity. So where does it already exist? And it exists in the State Board of Pharmacy. A lot of folks don't realize here in Ohio, we have companies that manufacture drugs. We have people that distribute drugs called wholesalers, and we have people that sell drugs called pharmacies. They're all licensed, they're all inspected, they all keep records. When I heard medical, I expect people would want a system that runs parallel to the current system. If the FDA or the federal government decides to change their regulations, we've already got a scheme in place, and it's a simple shifting of gears over to an existing system. So why recreate the wheel when you already have the infrastructure?
So run it through the State Board of Pharmacy.
We'd run it through the State Board of Pharmacy. And the medical board as well, I might add, because again, all the professional oversight that you see today with any prescription drug, that continuity of care, right? Taking care of the person, not just about marijuana. I go back. The patients we saw were complicated disease states, cancer, seizures. These are complicated disease states. Making sure that patient and the physician have a working relationship is also something you see in prescription drugs.
You brought up a little bit earlier about children with seizures, and obviously there might be some patients who would use medical marijuana, the active ingredient in it, an oil, an edible. Are edibles part of this, and how do you make sure that children are not at risk of being poisoned by eating something that looks like a gummy bear or eating something that looks like a candy?
Well, we're not doing candies, we're not doing gummy bears, we're not doing brownies or cookies. When we talk about edibles or infused products, we leave it up to the state board to do several things, and the State Board of Pharmacy, that is, to have a product that is not appealing to children, that it is in a child-resistant package or container. So we won't be doing red cherry gummy bears. We're not going to be doing brownies. We're not going to be doing cookies. The problems with those other products are they're not consistent and the dose is undefined. They're hard to make in a uniform way. Now, a lozenge for someone with cancer that's unable to eat in their final days of life, that makes sense to me. So those are the type of products that we're looking for that are convenient for the patient, but yet don't cause harm to the public.
Would you agree that when we talk about medical marijuana, that this absolutely has to be focused on the medicine and not about the money?
Absolutely. There's a bifurcation that's happening here. When I heard my friends and neighbors, whether they're old or young, talk about medical, I believe they were talking about doctors and patients and prescription drugs. I don't believe they were talking about cartels, growing marijuana, or smoking marijuana. But I believe the General Assembly has sat up and listened to their friends and neighbors and directly addressed the issue that was brought to our attention in November, and I believe we've answered it in a safe way.
What is the alternative? Because the Issue 3 campaign, $20 million plus spent on that campaign. Not every lawmaker in the Ohio legislature supports marijuana in any form whatsoever. What is the option between this piece of legislation and really having it drill down on medical, not the money, but the delivery and getting it to the people who need it the most, versus the alternative of this going into the Constitution?
Well, you can't change the Constitution, John, and I think the last thing we took out was probably alcohol prohibition. Even the folks that would like to see this business flourish, who are bringing this ballot initiative forward, admit they've made mistakes in other states. The problem is you can't fix it once it's in the Ohio Constitution. The law, however, is something we can change. So I can get as close to perfect and I can chase perfect every time we meet in the General Assembly. I can do that. You can't do that in a ballot initiative. So if you think the ballot initiative is perfect, I have yet to see a perfect piece of legislation, by the way, that is a fatal flaw. That is one that is not correctable. Legislation, John, I can go back and fix that. If I forgot something, if something needs change tomorrow or 10 years from now, I can go back and adjust. You can't do that in a constitutional amendment.
State Senator Dave Burke, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.